Coming at you from a different location in Ohio, but it was a crazy week one that we just need to talk about. And this is the time of the year where you just have to crumple up your draft papers, throw them all away, because nothing matters except winning fantasy football matchups at this point. So we're going through the guys that you need to get off of your waiver wire before week 2 fantasy football, and I'm already getting prepared for week 2, so please go down there, drop a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support. So this first group of guys right here, these are the guys that you need to claim right now. You need to claim these guys right now because they're on your waiver wire. They're going to be expensive this week, and these are the wide receivers and the tight ends that you need to go through. So I got Isaiah Likely, Khalil Shakir, Xavier Legette, Brandon Cooks, Tyler Johnson, and Foster Moreau. So with Isaiah Likely here, obviously this is a guy who has just an enormous week in fantasy football. He comes out, gets 12 targets in this game against the Chiefs on Thursday night. Everybody sees it. So obviously we've already been talking about Isaiah Likely. Gets 9 receptions, 111 yards, almost 2 touchdowns. This dude had one of the best touchdowns of the entire week, makes a bunch of guys miss, waltzes his way into the end zone, and then honestly was so close to just winning the entire game for the Baltimore Ravens. This was a massive game for Isaiah Likely, and I think that one of the things that we can count on is that Isaiah Likely is normally a backup for Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is normally the guy in every situation for Baltimore Ravens. And the good thing about tight ends in Baltimore is Lamar Jackson likes to throw to a tight end. So the fact that we had heard all offseason long, and we've heard it for many, many off seasons, but this was the first year and the first game that we've seen the Baltimore Ravens utilize the 2 tight end set and actually come through with it. They actually did it with Isaiah Likely this week, and that's what makes me believe this is going to be a guy who's not just going to be a guy who is relevant only if Mark Andrews isn't playing. And Mark Andrews was absent for a lot of the game. Made me and a lot of others think maybe he's a little bit more injured than they were leading on before the actual game. Isaiah Likely was out there a lot in that game in 2 tight end sets while Mark Andrews was on the field. This is what leads me to believe that this is not just some fluke game for Isaiah Likely. He was not in place of Mark Andrews. He was in with Mark Andrews. This is a guy you need to get. He's 9.7% rostered on ESPN right now. He's not going to be easy. I mean, there's going to be people claiming this guy, but it's a guy that you need to get, and I would definitely throw $10 fab his way. Khalil Shakir of the Buffalo Bills. Listen, based on target share, he was not the wide receiver 1. Keon Coleman was very involved in this game. He had 3 targets, caught all 3 of them 42 yards, and a touchdown in this game. What we did see from this Buffalo Bills team is, much to the surprise of some, but not me and maybe a lot of others of you, Josh Allen is still a really freaking good quarterback. This guy can get it done with basically whoever he has at his disposal, and Khalil Shakir is one of his top guys. Now again, 3 receptions on 3 targets, that's not some outrageous stat line. But Khalil Shakir, we've never seen this type of involvement from Khalil Shakir on a regular basis. And the reality is that they're just not weapon friendly. So it's not like Khalil Shakir is going to all of a sudden get a bunch of targets usurped by him from a bunch of other guys that we haven't heard of already. Curtis Samuel is a guy that I just don't particularly love in this offense. Khalil Shakir looks like he could be in line for a number 2, number 3 target type of involvement in this Buffalo offense. Again, keyword led by Josh Allen. That's what matters here in this Buffalo offense. So while he's not as high priority as Isaiah Likely is, he's definitely one of the most important guys that you want to get on the waiver wire in their wide receiver category. Now, Xavier Legette is a guy that I have been on and off of for it's been a little bit of a crazy offseason for me personally with Xavier Legette. He's a guy I used to really draft quite a bit in underdog best ball drafts, and I really liked Xavier Legette's talent coming out of college. But since a couple weeks ago, I just kind of started drafting him less because he didn't look great in the preseason, and then like he wasn't even active for a lot of preseason. He comes out and is one of the few really lone bright spots in the Panthers' entire offense. And by the way, that'll be a topic I'll address on my Monday night live stream, what I got right and wrong. Xavier Legette, though, looks like he's going to be involved a lot sooner than I thought he would. He had 7 targets in this game, 4 receptions, 35 yards, and again, only 5.5 fantasy points in a half PPR format, so it's not like people are going to be really clamoring to get this guy. But what is important to note here is the targets that he collected. 7 targets out of Bryce Young's throws. This is an important guy in this offense, and it looks like just maybe more important than they thought he would be very early on. Now, the key with Xavier Legette in particular is that with this Carolina offense, it's important to know they got hammered. They got hammered today. It was an absolute mess offensively for the Panthers. So it's like, can you really trust this kind of workload for a guy like Xavier Legette? Here's the reality. Xavier Legette is on an offense that has, why would they have any issue with like throwing away their depth chart and just playing guys who work? And it looks like to me, Xavier Legette was working to a certain extent with Bryce Young. So they're probably thinking very similar to us who maybe lost in week 1. Just throw away the paper, throw away our pre-draft analysis, throw away all the BS, just win football games. And the guy who's helping us, at least to a certain extent, looks like it could be Xavier Legette. So 29.1% rostered. He's widely available. I would definitely grab Xavier Legette today. Brandon Cooks, 29.7% rostered. A guy I haven't been big on for a long time. You know, he's drafted in 2014. He's, had up and down years. This looks like it might be a good year for him again. Obviously, with the newly signed most expensive man in the world, Dak Prescott, has a good game in week 1. Brandon Cooks, 4 catches on 7 targets, 40 yards, and a touchdown in this game. Now, Brandon Cooks, this is going to be a guy that I will say this. I don't have as much faith in him maintaining this throughout the year because he is an older player, and Dallas usually is very hard to predict with their wide receiver twos. Maybe it's because they haven't really found a guy that they're really comfortable with giving that wide receiver two volume to. And Brandon Cooks last year just wasn't that guy. Maybe it's this year. Now he's 29.7% rostered, and just based on what they did, not only against a strong defense in Cleveland's house, they went and took it to them right away during the season. This is a strong acquisition that I think you should make if you're hungry for a wide receiver to make a difference either in a trade value situation in a couple weeks or even starting for you in a couple weeks here. Tyler Johnson's in a situation right now where this game is just basically over, this Rams and Detroit Lions game. Puka Nacua down with a knee injury. We don't know what the situation looks like. So you may be watching this on Monday morning and we may have news that Puka returns next week. What we've seen from Tyler Johnson in this game, as of the time of this filming, Tyler Johnson looks like he's going to be a serious target if Puka Nacua is out. This is a guy who has made big plays for them. Demarcus Robinson hasn't done much as far as big plays go. And what they need in that receiving core is a big play guy. Because Cooper Kupp, as far as tonight looks like he's still Matt Stafford's priority number 1 target. Now, that may be in part because Puka Nacua is not fully healthy. But the other reality is that Cooper Kupp still maintains a really good amount of chemistry with Matt Stafford, but he's not exactly fast anymore. So he needs to have a guy who is going to open up the middle of this field for him, because Tyler Johnson looks like he could be the guy who stretches the field a little bit. So Tyler Johnson, based on his involvement in this game against the Detroit Lions, looks like a guy you need to be picking up if Puka Nacua is going to miss extended time. And the good news is, he's on no rosters, 0% rostered on ESPN right now. This is an amazing pickup that you absolutely need to make in a pass-friendly offense with the Los Angeles Rams. Foster Moreau, if you can't get Isaiah Likely, good consolation prize, I would say. Prioritize Isaiah Likely. Foster Moreau, I'm not confident in telling you guys. This is not somebody that you need to put like $15 fab into. I'm not very confident in that assumption right there. But Foster Moreau, for the Saints this week, did have a pretty good week in fantasy football. Foster Moreau is looking like he may very well be the tight end 1 in New Orleans. He had 4 targets compared to Juwan Johnson's 3. They both ended up scoring a touchdown in this game, so they both ended up being good fantasy plays. And basically every Saint was this week. But Foster Moreau looks like he has the inside track to be the tight end 1 and maybe has more of a red zone opportunity than Juwan Johnson does throughout the season. Now, the next group of guys here is my claim now running backs. These are the guys you need to claim on your waiver wire today, especially if you're struggling in running back. This is someone I am confident in. Tank Bigsby. Tank Bigsby, if he is not on your roster, and especially if you have Travis Etienne, needs to be on your roster. by this week. 4.6% rostered right now. And listen, this is something I've been talking about all offseason, and I feel kind of vindicated this week where I got a lot of things wrong. This is one thing that I have been kind of consistently saying. The problem with ETN this year is that all offseason, all we've heard from Doug Peterson, the head coach there, is, yeah, we want to get Tank Bigsby more involved this year. Last year, he wasn't saying that. He was saying, yeah, Travis Etienne's like a 1,500, 1,600 yard guy. This offseason, the narrative was totally different from the head coach himself, and it showed. It showed in a big way today. 12 carries for 73 yards. Averaged 6.1 yards per carry. Now, he doesn't get in the end zone, and he doesn't have receiving value, but this dude got more carry yards and just as many carries as Travis Etienne did. Now, here's the thing with Tank Bigsby, right? Tank Bigsby, I'm not telling you to claim him so you can play him in week 2. What I'm telling you is if you have Travis Etienne, and even if you don't, you can pick up Tank Bigsby and wave it in the guy who has Travis Etienne's face for trade bait. Now, if you do have Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby needs to be on your roster because the reality is this guy looks like he will have some sort of involvement. And in the event that Travis Etienne goes down, Tank Bigsby looks much better than he looked last year. So Tank Bigsby, as far as I'm concerned, should not be on waiver wires after this week. He showed too much involvement in this offense that I do believe is ultimately going to be really good in fantasy football at some point in the season. They didn't look fantastic. They didn't look totally buttoned up, but they're going to get better in fantasy. Now, Jaleel McLaughlin of the Denver Broncos here, again, I think he needs to be on waivers this week. Now, he's pretty widely rostered. This is an in case he's not rostered scenario. He's 44.4% rostered already, but he shouldn't be on waivers. He out-carried Javonte Williams today. It was a little bit of a weirder game. Obviously, with Seattle, that was a tougher defense, and again, I'll go over that on the Monday Night Live stream because I got that one wrong. But Jaleel McLaughlin definitely looks like he's going to be involved to some extent. Now, it could be a Tank Bigsby situation where he really is the RB2, and Javonte Williams does have more value as the season goes on, and I do expect that to a certain extent. With this Denver offense, not a high-potency offense right now, but with the rookie quarterback and with Sean Payton, I do expect them to get better offensively as the year goes, and they play easier defenses, so Jaleel McLaughlin definitely should not be on waivers. Alexander Mattison, I cannot believe I am saying this, but Alexander Mattison is a guy that you need to get. Alexander Mattison of the Las Vegas Raiders comes in, only has 5 carries, but he has 19 yards on those carries and ends up being a receiving back for the Las Vegas Raiders. 4 catches on 6 targets and a touchdown here for 43 yards. Now, here's the reality with a guy like Alexander Mattison. Alexander Mattison is not going to be a guy that you can count on for weekly carries. But the reality with the Las Vegas Raiders in particular, I think there's going to be a lot of game scripts that are pretty similar to how it turned out with the Los Angeles Chargers, where they are not going to be getting a ton of points and they're going to be playing from behind quite a bit and pretty early often. So in the case that Zamir White doesn't monopolize the targets, which didn't look like he did in week 1 against the Denver Broncos, Alexander Mattison looks like he will be, at the very least, a receiving back. And over time, he may end up getting more opportunities than Zamir White, because the reality with Zamir White is we haven't seen what this guy is going to actually look like in an entire NFL season. We don't know what Zamir White looks like. We do know that Alexander Mattison has shown upside in the past, and he showed it again today. He showed it again in a big way in the receiving game. He had 14.2 fantasy points in a half PPR format. Alexander Mattison is only 10.2% rostered, should be on rosters this week. Now, this is the group of guys that I think you just need to wait a week, wait another week, see how they do in week 2, but definitely keep your eye on them for now. Wan'Dale Robinson, Justin Fields, Quentin Johnston, and Bucky Irving right here. So Wan'Dale Robinson, 6.9% rostered on this Giants offense. Ultimately, it's just capped. I mean, I've been talking about it all offseason. Giants weapons are just going to be capped in fantasy football because this offense is bad. Daniel Jones is bad. So, there's not like tremendous upside here, but he did have 12 targets in this game. It's a lot of targets, man. That's a lot of volume coming in Wan'Dale Robinson's direction. It's a gadget player. He's going to be used heavily often in this offense. He's kind of the second best option as far as the receivers go. He's better than Darius Slayton. So it's a guy that wait to see in a week what their offense looks like. Maybe they gel better. I'm not counting on it. That's why I'm not saying go out and pick up Wan'Dale Robinson, because I ultimately don't think he has tons of fantasy value long term. Justin Fields, on a football level, didn't look bad. 17 of 23. Like, he was really efficient, over almost 75% completion percentage. I think him and Arthur Smith actually work really well together, because Arthur Smith is a good offensive coordinator, I do believe, and looked pretty good coaching and calling plays for Justin Fields. And he did look good on the ground. 14 carries, 57 yards. But the reality is, like, only 12 fantasy points and a half PPR, 4 passing touchdown league. Justin Fields in the Steelers offense just ultimately doesn't have a ton of upside, I don't think. Now, I do believe that there will be games where if Fields plays, he will be able to pop off a couple good games for you. But right now, we don't know what the Russell Wilson situation is. So I would just say keep an eye on for the next week. See what the Russell Wilson news turns out to be throughout the week. Quentin Johnston and Bucky Irving here. Quentin Johnston, obviously big disappointment last year. Not great this week. Not saying he was great. 3 catches on 5 targets for 38 yards and was one of their top receivers this week. So it looks like he is going to be pretty involved in this offense. And I do want to believe that he will be better with Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman this year. I think he is a stable head coach. I've been kind of quietly on Quentin Johnston for a lot of the offseason. So again, don't rush out and get him, but keep an eye on him. And Bucky Irving, the guy that you probably need to keep on the most. 9 carries, 62 yards. That's 6.9 yards per carry. Was involved in the passing game as well. Bucky Irving was involved. Now, there was a point in this game where he was more involved than other times because they did end up crushing the Commanders today. So, again, don't go out and get this guy and expect to be able to flex him next week or to be able to flex him in a couple weeks. Like, I do believe that Rachaad White still does have a pretty solid grip on this backfield. But again, a good guy to get if you have a handcuff situation that you want to attack, or a guy that you do see future upside with, especially in the receiving game, as we see Rachaad White possibly get phased out of that role in the next several weeks. So let me know what your favorite matchup was today, and tomorrow you will see the best buy low trade targets for week 2 fantasy football.